Is the money your daughter-in-law wires you every month enough, Dad? My son asked me that on Christmas Eve, standing in my kitchen doorway still wearing his coat. I set down the can opener I'd been wrestling with and looked at him. What money, son? The silence that followed was the kind that changes things permanently. His name is Raymond, my son, and he'd driven 4 hours from Charlotte to spend Christmas with me in the same house in Greensboro where he grew up. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the drive. 41 years old, successful, a senior engineer at a medical device company, and he had the eyes of a man carrying weight he hadn't told anyone about. My daughter-in-law had stayed home. Migraine, Raymond said when he arrived. I noticed he said it to the floor. I'm 73. Retired after 31 years with the U.S. Postal Service, 22 of those as a supervisor managing a distribution center that processed 40,000 pieces of mail daily. People sometimes laugh when I tell them that. They picture a mail carrier. What I actually did was run a small logistics operation. Staff schedules, route efficiency, damage claims, budget oversight. You learn to spot patterns. You learn when numbers don't add up. Raymond set his overnight bag on the kitchen chair, the same chair he used to dump his backpack on after school, and he asked me again, gently, like he was afraid of the answer. Dad, the monthly transfers. Lynette said she's been sending you $1,200 every month since January for groceries and utilities and your prescription costs. You saying you don't have that account? I put the can opener down completely. Son, my pension comes in on the 3rd of every month. $1,140. My Medicare supplement is $182, auto-drafted. What's left after utilities and groceries and my blood pressure medication? I paused. Last month was $61. I keep a running ledger right there in that drawer. I pointed to the small wooden cabinet beside the refrigerator, the one my wife had picked out at an estate sale in 1987, the year we moved into this house. Raymond's face went through several things at once. I recognized the sequence because I'd seen it in employees who discovered something wrong in a report they'd signed off on. First, disbelief. Then the quick internal arithmetic. Then something slower and darker settling underneath. He pulled out his phone. She showed me the confirmations, he said, more to himself than to me. His thumb moved across the screen. 12 transfers. 144,400 total. All to an account she said she opened for you. He turned the phone so I could see. A transfer record. Payee, Wallace Sr., support, G-Bay, Bay-O, Greensboro. The amounts $1,200 each, dated the 15th of every month, going back to January. My name is Wallace. Wallace Pruitt. Nobody calls me Wallace Sr. except official paperwork. I looked at that label and felt something cold settle into my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. Raymond, I said carefully. I have never seen $1 of that. He sat down. He sat down like someone had taken the bones out of his legs. From the living room, the Christmas tree lights blinked the way they'd blinked every December since 1994, when my wife bought that particular string of lights at a Kmart going out of business sale. She said the color was warmer than the others. She was right. She was right about most things. She passed 8 years ago, and some nights I still reach for her side of the bed before I remember. Raymond stared at the transfer records. I watched him. 31 years of supervising people teaches you to let silence work. Don't fill it. Let the other person arrive at where they're going. She handles all our household accounts, he finally said. She took that over maybe 2 years after we got married. Said I was disorganized, that she was better at it. He looked up. I gave her a household allowance. A significant one. She manages everything. Mortgage, utilities, her car payment, our joint savings contributions. I trusted her. I trusted her. 3 words carrying 6 years of marriage. I stood up, went to that wooden cabinet, pulled out the manila folder I keep my financial records in, bank statements, pension stubs, Medicare summary, pharmacy receipts. I arranged them on the kitchen table the way I used to arrange incident reports, chronological, organized, irrefutable. This is everything I've received in 2024, I said. You can go line by line? He did. For 20 minutes, he went line by line. Neither of us said much. The refrigerator hummed. The tree lights blinked. Outside, a neighbor's dog was barking at something in the dark. When he finished, he put the papers down and pressed both palms flat on the table. Dad, where does she think that money is going? I considered what I was about to say, considered whether I might be wrong, whether there was some explanation I hadn't thought of. I'd been wrong before. I was wrong once about an employee I thought was skimming fuel receipts. Turned out to be a bookkeeping error on my end. I spent 3 weeks apologizing, but there was no bookkeeping error here. 12 transfers, 12 confirmations, 0 deposits in my account. I don't know, I said, but I think we need to find out before you say anything to her. Raymond looked at me for a long moment. He nodded slowly. We talked until past midnight. Raymond spread his own bank statements on the table. He had access to a separate account from his salary deposits, and Lynette managed transfers from a joint account she maintained. He'd trusted the system because the bills were always paid and she handled the details. He worked long hours. She'd positioned herself as the one who kept the household running. It was a reasonable arrangement, he said, except that somewhere in it, a parallel transaction had started that he hadn't created and I hadn't received. I went to bed at 12:30 and lay there without sleeping, doing what I always do when something doesn't add up. Running it backward. $14,400 in 12 months. To an account in my name I'd never opened. Which means someone opened it. Which means there's documentation. Which means there are records. I got up at 6, made coffee, and called my bank when they opened at 9. The representative was polite and thorough. She searched every variation of my name, my social security number, my address, no secondary account, no trust account, no support account with any label matching what Raymond had shown me. I thanked her, hung up, wrote the time, and her name in my notepad. Raymond came downstairs at 9:30. He'd slept worse than I had. I could tell by the way he moved through the kitchen, slow and careful like a man with a headache. He was trying not to aggravate. I slid the notepad across to him. No account in my name at my bank. No account in my name at my bank. No account at all. He poured coffee and sat down. I went through her email last night, he said quietly. On her laptop. I know. But I needed to. He put the mug down. Dad, there's an account. It's not in your name. It's in hers. She just calls it Wallace Sr. in the transfer memo field. The actual account is a personal savings account in her name at a different bank. The coffee was good. I focused on that for a second. My wife used to say I made the best coffee she'd ever had, which was almost certainly a lie but a generous one. So she's been transferring your money, I said, to an account she controls with my name in the memo. Yes, for a year. Yes, for a year. Yes. I looked at my son. He was staring at the table. He'd driven 4 hours to have Christmas with me, and instead, he was sitting in his childhood kitchen on Christmas morning, learning that his wife had been stealing from him while using my name as cover. Raymond, I said, look at me. He did. This is not your fault. You trusted your partner. That is what you are supposed to do in a marriage. What she did, that's on her, not you. He nodded, but I could see he didn't quite believe it yet. That was all right. It would take time. What do I do? He asked. First, I said, we document everything quietly. Before you confront her, before you change anything, before she knows we know. You go back to Charlotte like nothing happened. You make copies of everything you found, the transfer records, the emails, whatever account information you can access. You bring them to an attorney before you say one word to her. You sound like you've done this before. I've investigated 17 cases of internal theft over 31 years, I said. The rule is always the same. Documentation before confrontation. Every time someone skips that step, they regret it. Raymond left the day after Christmas. He hugged me at the door for longer than usual. I stood in the doorway and watched his car until the taillights disappeared at the end of the block, the same way I used to watch him leave for college 20 years ago. Then I went inside, made a fresh pot of coffee, and started my own file. I want to be fair to Lynette. I want to be accurate about what I actually knew of her before all this. She'd been in Raymond's life for 7 years, married to him for 6. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a property management company, and she was good at her job from what Raymond described. She could be charming. At family dinners, she remembered details, asked follow-up questions about things I'd mentioned months before, knew the names of my neighbors, once sent me a card on the anniversary of my wife's passing with a handwritten note that was genuinely thoughtful. I liked her. I want to be honest about that. I liked her, and I thought Raymond had chosen well. What I noticed in retrospect was smaller. She often steered conversations about money away from me and Raymond having them directly. When Raymond mentioned his salary had increased, she would redirect to their renovation plans, their vacation, her sister's wedding expenses. I assumed she was private about finances. A lot of people are. I thought nothing of it until I had reason to. I also noticed that Christmas, when she stayed home with a migraine, that Raymond had seemed almost relieved. I didn't examine that at the time. I filed it away without knowing I was filing it. In January, Raymond retained a family attorney in Charlotte. He brought her copies of the transfer records, the email chain he'd found, and a statement from the second bank confirming the account existed in Lynette's name with a balance of $11,200, money she hadn't yet moved or spent. The attorney, a woman with 30 years of family law experience whose name I won't put here, told Raymond clearly, this is financial fraud within a marriage. In North Carolina, marital misconduct, including financial deception, is relevant to equitable distribution of assets in a divorce. It also potentially constitutes criminal conduct. She recommended Raymond gather any additional evidence of where money from the account had been spent and file for divorce before Lynette became aware he had consulted an attorney. He did both. The account statements told their own story. In 12 months, $14,400 had passed through. Of that, $6,200 had been withdrawn in cash in amounts of $400 and $500 at a time, the kind of amount small enough not to trigger scrutiny. $3,000 had gone to a furniture store, $1,800 to a spa, $800 to a clothing boutique. The remaining balance sat untouched, possibly saving, possibly waiting. Raymond's attorney filed in mid-January. The divorce petition was served to Lynette on a Tuesday afternoon while Raymond was at work. He'd arranged to be in a meeting, documentation that he was somewhere else entirely. He called me that evening. His voice was flat and careful, the way voices get when someone is managing themselves very deliberately. She called me 17 times, he said. I let it go to voicemail. Her attorney called my cell. I gave them my attorney's number. Good, I said. She texted that I was destroying our marriage over a misunderstanding, that the account was for household reserves, that she was going to tell people I was mentally unstable. That phrase, mentally unstable, I recognized it. It's a particular kind of threat, the kind designed not to hurt you, but to discredit you, to preemptively contaminate any account you might give of what happened. Write down the exact wording of every message, I said. Don't respond to any of them. Everything goes through your attorney. Dad. A pause. She mentioned you. She said you were confused and misremembered things. That you told her months ago you didn't want the money directly and asked her to save it. I sat with that for a moment. I hadn't spoken to Lynette in 3 weeks before Raymond's Christmas visit. The last conversation we'd had was a 7-minute call in late November, when she'd asked what Raymond might want for his birthday. There had been no discussion of money, no discussion of savings, no request of any kind. She's going to need a better story than that, I said. I have 31 years of documented records from the Postal Service, and I kept the same habits after retirement. Everything I receive and spend is in that ledger. My bank statements go back to 1991. I can account for every dollar I have ever had. I know, he said. That's why I think she believed it would work. She picked the wrong family to lie about money to. In February, I drove to Charlotte. Raymond's attorney wanted a statement from me, and she wanted to meet me in person first. Her office was clean and organized in a way I appreciated. Files labeled and stacked with purpose. She was direct, which I also appreciated. She asked me to walk her through every financial record I had for the past 14 months. I brought the full ledger, my bank statements printed and organized, pharmacy receipts, the notes I'd taken from my January call with my bank. She reviewed everything without speaking, occasionally making small marks on her notepad. "Mr. Ribble, Pruitt," she said when she finished, "this is exactly what we needed. Your records established definitively that no funds were received, combined with the account statements showing the transfers went to Ms. Moore, Lynette's account, and her own internal bank records showing the cash withdrawals and personal purchases, we have a clear picture." "Can she claim the money was a family fund she managed on my behalf?" I asked. "She'll try." Her attorney already floated that argument. Our response is simple. There's no documentation of any agreement, no correspondence between you establishing this, no medical expenses or grocery purchases or utility payments that can be connected to the account. Every transaction is personal. She paused, and she made the mistake of putting your name in the memo field. That demonstrates she knew the money was supposed to reach you. It's the most damaging detail in the file. March arrived cold and rainy. Raymond called to tell me Lynette had been negotiating through her attorney, now claiming the account was a surprise savings fund she'd been building so they could help me with a larger expense. Home repairs, maybe, or a medical emergency. She presented no documentation of this plan, no emails discussing it, no communication with Raymond about it, nothing. Her attorney wrote that I was elderly and had exhibited signs of memory confusion. I asked Raymond's attorney to have my primary care physician and my pharmacist each provide a statement. Both documented that I was sharp, organized, and consistent in managing my own health information. My doctor of 14 years noted in his letter that I brought printed medication logs to every appointment and asked detailed questions about drug interactions that most patients my age and younger never thought to ask. Lynette hired a local Charlotte attorney to file a counterclaim against Raymond, arguing emotional distress and contested asset division. The claim included a paragraph describing me as a disruptive influence on their marriage who had encouraged Raymond toward paranoia. I read that paragraph twice and felt something I would not call anger. It was colder than anger. It was the feeling I used to get when I caught someone falsifying a report, a specific kind of clarity. April brought the deposition. I drove to Charlotte again and sat across a conference table from Lynette's attorney for 2.5 hours. He was young, maybe 35, and he had a method I recognized. Begin with easy questions to establish rhythm, then introduce inconsistencies to see if the witness adjusts their story. I'd used a version of it myself in employee reviews. I answered every question with exactly what I knew. No elaboration, no interpretation, just fact. Did I ever speak with Lynette about a savings account on my behalf? No. Did I ever request that Raymond's contributions to my support come through her rather than directly? No. Did I ever receive any communication, written, email, text, phone, discussing this account's existence before Raymond mentioned it on December 24th? No. He tried several angles to suggest I might be misremembering. I cited specific dates and amounts from my ledger, which I had brought with me. After the second hour, his questions grew shorter and less specific. At the end, walking out through the lobby, Raymond's attorney touched my elbow. "You were excellent," she said quietly. "Exactly what we needed." "I managed a distribution center for 22 years, I said. "I know how to stay on record." In May, Lynette's counterclaim was dismissed. The judge found insufficient evidence to support the emotional distress allegations and noted that the financial records established a clear pattern of unauthorized transfers inconsistent with any plausible account of a family savings arrangement. The divorce settlement hearing was scheduled for June. Through Raymond, I learned things about Lynette's situation in the months that followed, not because I sought them out, but because her actions had directly involved me, and Raymond kept me informed out of respect. She'd retained 2 attorneys by then, her original one having withdrawn from the case. The financial fraud allegation hadn't been criminally charged. The district attorney reviewed the case and declined, citing the complexity of marital financial arrangements, but it was a matter of public court record. Her employer had apparently asked questions. Whether she kept her job, I didn't know, and it wasn't something I spent energy wondering about. The settlement, reached 3 days before the scheduled hearing, divided their assets equitably, with 2 modifications. Raymond retained full ownership of the house, which had been in his name before the marriage, and Lynette was required to repay the $14,400 from the account, every cent of it, directly to Raymond, as restitution for funds diverted from marital accounts without authorization. Raymond called me the evening the settlement was signed. He sounded lighter than he had in months. Not happy exactly. Divorce isn't a thing a decent person is happy about, but settled. Like something had been resolved instead of just ended. "It's done," he said. "I know," I said. "How are you actually doing?" A pause. "I feel stupid," he said. "I gave her access to everything because I trusted her and she used it. I feel like I should have known." "You couldn't have known," I said. "She was careful. She used small amounts, spread across a year. She picked a target, me, that she assumed wouldn't track things closely. She had a story ready. She built systems that looked legitimate. That's not something a reasonable person expects from their spouse. Why did she think you wouldn't track things?" I thought about that. "Because I'm old," I said, "and people assume older men stop paying attention, that we hand things over and let other people manage, that we're too proud to admit when we don't understand something, so we don't ask questions." I paused. She didn't know that I've kept a financial ledger since 1978, that I reconcile it against my bank statements every month the way other men my age watch the game, that when something doesn't match, I write it down. Raymond laughed a little. It was a real laugh, brief but real, and I was glad to hear it. "I'm coming up in August," he said, "for a couple of weeks if that's okay. I need some time away from Charlotte, away from everything that has her fingerprints on it." "Your room is exactly as it was," I said. "I'll make sure the mattress is turned." He came in August. He slept late the first few days, which was not like him and which I understood completely. By the second week he was up early, helping me repair the back fence, sitting on the porch after dinner watching the neighborhood settle into evening the way neighborhoods do in late summer. Kids called in, lights coming on in windows, the particular quiet that descends around 8 o'clock. One evening he said, "I keep thinking about what you said, about her picking you as the target." I waited. "She thought you'd be the weak point," he said. "The variable she could hide behind, and instead you were the one who caught it." "You caught it," I said. "You asked the question. You answered it honestly when it would have been easier not to." I thought about that. It was true that I could have covered for her, at least in that first moment, suggested maybe I had forgotten, maybe there was some confusion, let Raymond believe his household was in order. It would have been less disruptive. It would have been easier for everyone in the short term, but I've spent 73 years believing that a lie of convenience is still a lie, that the damage from leaving something unaddressed always compounds, that the moment you see something true, you owe it accuracy, to yourself first, and then to anyone it affects. My wife believed that too. We agreed on it so completely, we never had to talk about it. It was just how we operated. Raymond left for Charlotte in late August with the car packed and his face carrying something different than when he'd arrived. Not healed, but oriented maybe. Pointed toward something. I stood on the porch and watched until his car turned at the corner. Then I went inside, pulled out the ledger, and wrote down the date and the fact of the August visit. The way I always do. The way I have done for 46 years, without missing a single month. Some habits outlast everything. The people who count on your records existing will thank you for that eventually, even if they never know to.